Hey guys, welcome to another video of Creepypastas, and today I am showing you the Laughing Jack story. And I know I haven't been uploading the two ones I was supposed to put up, which is Smile Dog and the Slenderman, which is in this picture. They are gonna probably be up today, and from when you're watching this video, it should be up by now. So, thanks for watching, and see you later. It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old son, James, was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James has always been a quiet boy. He plays by himself mostly. He never had many friends, but he always had a wild imagination. I was in the kitchen feeding our dog Fido when I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I'm not I'm not sure who it was he could be talking to. Could he finally made a friend? Being a single mom, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son, so I decided to go outside and check on him. When I went into the backyard, I was a bit confused because James was the only person back there. Was he talking to himself? I could have sworn I heard another voice. James, it's time to come inside, I called out for him. He came inside and sat down at the kitchen table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. James, who were you talking to out there? I asked. James looked up for a moment. I was playing with my new friend, he said, smiling. I poured him some milk and continued to pry. As any good mother would. Pray, I guess. As any good mother would. Does your friend have a name? Why didn't you ask him to have lunch with us? I asked. James stared at me for a moment before replying. His name is Laughing Jack. I was a bit taken back by what he said. Oh, that's a strange name. What does your friend look like? I asked, a bit confused. He's a clown. He has long hair and a big swirly cone nose. He got long arms and baggy pants with strippy socks. And he always smiles. I realized my son was talking to imaginary friends, especially when he has no real kids to play with. It's probably just a phase. The rest of the day went by per usual, and it was starting to get late, so I put James to bed. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and made sure to turn on his nightlight before I closed the door. I was pretty tired myself, so I decided to go to bed not long after. I had an awful nightmare. It was dark. I was some kind of random amusement park. I was scared, running through the endless fields of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a terrible look to it. Eventually it was black and white. The prized stuffed animals was hung from the noses in the game huts, all with a grin stitched into their faces. I felt like the whole park was looking at me, even though there wasn't another living thing in sight. Then suddenly I began to hear music. The sound of Pop Goes the Weasel being played on a squeeze box. It echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. I followed its tune to the circus tents, almost in a trance. Unable to stop my legs from moving forward, it was pitch black. The only light came from a single spotlight shining in the center of the big top. As I walked toward the light, the music slowed down. I found myself singing along, unable to stop. All around the Malabar brush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey threw the twaddle of fun. The music stopped right before its climax, and suddenly the lights shot on, and the intensity of the lights was so practically blinding, all I could see was a small dark silhouette figure shuffle towards me. Then another one appeared, and another, and another. There were dozens of them, all coming toward me. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. All I could do was watch as the haunted figures drew near. As they got closer, I could see they were children. As I looked at each one, I noticed that they're all horribly disgusted and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their body. Some others had severe burnt, and others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground, and tears inside of me. As the children tore me apart, I faded away. All I could hear was horrible, awful, evil laughter. I woke up the next morning in cold sweat. After taking a few deep breaths, I looked over and saw that a few of James' action figures were positioned facing on top of my nightstand. I sighed. James has probably woken up early and put those there. I gathered up up the toys and made my way to James' room. However, when I opened the door, James was sound asleep. I just shrugged and placed the toys back in his toy box and headed out into the living room. A little while later, James woke up and I made him breakfast. He's quiet and seemed a little groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I decided to ask him about the toys. James, honey, did you put the toys in Mommy's room this morning? His eyes shot up at me for a moment, then quickly glanced back down at his cereal. Laughing Jack did it. I rolled my eyes and responded, Well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room. James nodded and finished up his breakfast, then decided to go play out in the backyard. When I went to relax in the living room, and I must have dozed off because I woke up in a couple hours later. Shit! I need to go check on James. I was a bit worried. It had been over 2 hours and I haven't checked on him. I stepped out into the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. I was getting nervous, so I called out, James! 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 Where are you? Just then I heard a giggling come from the front yard. I rushed through the gate around to the front of the house. James was sitting on the sidewalk, and I breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. James, how many times have I told you stay in the back? James was, What are you eating? James looked at me and reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of candies in all colors. This made me nervous. James, who gave you that candy? James just stared at me, not speaking. James, please tell Mommy where you got the candy. James hugged his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart sunk. I kneeled down to look at him in the eye. James, I have enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He is not real. Now this is a very serious situation. I needed to know who gave you this candy. I couldn't see my son's eyes. I could see my son's eyes tear up. But Mommy, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James never lied to me, but what he's telling me is impossible. I made him spit out the candy and throw the rest away. James appears to be fine. Maybe I'm just overreacting. After all, he could gotten it from Tom and Linda from next door, or Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'm going to have to keep a close eye on James. That night, I put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early myself. Suddenly, I woke up by the loud bang coming from the kitchen. I sprung out of bed and hurried downstairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown to the floor. Our dog, Fido, hung from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with the candy, the same type that James was eating earlier that day. My shock was quickly broken by a sharp scream coming from James' room, followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs with a quick speed and that only a mother whose child in danger could have. I burst through the door and lights flickered. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed to the ground. My poor son in his bed, crying and shaking with fear. A pool of urine stained the sheets. I scooped my child and ran out of the house and went next door to Tom and Linda's. Luckily, they were still awake. They let us use their phones, and I called the police. It didn't take them long to arrive. I explained to them what happened. They looked at me as if I was crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was a dead dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten into the house and done this right before making a quick escape. When they heard me coming from the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked and none windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next day, James stayed inside. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to see him leave my sight. I went into the garage and focused on his old baby monitor and set it up in his room. If anything comes into his room tonight, I'll be able to hear it. I went to the kitchen, grabbed the largest knife from the drawer, and put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little boy. Soon enough night came. I put James to bed. He was afraid, but I promised him that I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and turned on the night light. Before closing the door, I whispered, "Good night, James. I love you." I tried to stay up as long as I could, but after a few hours I felt myself drifting off. My baby could be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. I just laid my head on the pillow and heard a soft noise come from the baby monitor. I put on my nightstand. First sounded like its interface, like some kind of radio would make when you turn on. Then it turned to a soft moan. James was asleep. Then I heard the laugh from my nightmare. That horrible laugh. I sprung up from the bed, grabbed the knife from under my pillow. I rushed over to James' room, cracked the door open, and I tilted the lights. I turned on the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step in. I could feel the warm, thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James' nightstand came on, and I could see the absurd horror laid in front of me. James' body was nailed up to the wall, nails piercing through his hands and feet. His chest was cut open with his organs hung down to the floor. His eyes and tongue had been removed, along with the most of his teeth. I was disgusted. I could hardly believe my baby boy. Then I heard it again, the self-desperate moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby, in so much pain, barely clinging to life. I ran across the room and vomited on the floor, but my sickness was interrupted by a horrible crackle coming from behind me. I spun around while he was whipping bile from my mouth. Then out of the shadows emerged the responsible for all this horror. Laughing Jack, his ghost. White skin and matted black hair hung down to his shoulders. He has piercing white eyes surrounded by black rings. His twisted smile revealed a sharp, narrow, jagged teeth, and his skin didn't look like skin at all. It looked mostly like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy, black and white clown outfit and with striped sleeves and socks. His body itself was grotesque, scooped, his long arms hanging down from past his waist, and the way he poised it made him look almost boneless, like a rag doll. He let out a sinking laugh as if to let know he was pleased with my reaction to his work. He turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh, more horrific sight as he laid out. That was enough to shake me from my terror. I snapped, "Get away from me, you bastard!" I ran at the monster, raising the knife above my head, and stabbed it down at him. But as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared into a black cloud of smoke. The knife passed right through and pierced James' still beating heart, splashed the warm blood in my face. No, what have I done? My baby! I killed my baby! I immediately fell to my knees, and I could hear sirens from the distance growing louder. My boy, my sweet baby boy! I promised Mommy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Police soon arrived to find me in front of my son, still welding the knife covered in my baby's blood. The trial was short, and Sandy and I was placed in the philosophy house for the criminally insane, for where I've been put for the past 2 months. It's not so bad here, and the only reason why I'm awake now is because someone is playing "Pop Goes the Weasel" outside my window. I'll talk to the Orton Lies about it in the morning.